The 48 Laws of Power, Part 2 by Robert Greene. In the year 433, the island of Corcyra was about to go to war with the city of Corinth, and the two sides sent ambassadors to Athens in an attempt to win the Athenians to their side, as the party that would gain Athena's support would surely win the war. The ambassador of Corcyra began to speak first and told them that in the past there were no relations of friendship or gratitude between Corcyra and Athens, and the island didn't help the Athenians in the past, but on the contrary, it was building alliances with their enemies. The only thing that Corcyra could offer was an alliance for mutual interests, as Corcyra had a great naval fleet that was only surpassed in size and strength by the Athenian fleet itself. So the alliance between them would be a great force that would terrorize and frighten Sparta, the rival. As for the ambassador of Corinth, his speech was a very emotional one, in which he told them about all the aids that Corinth provided in order to serve Athena's interest in the past, and pointed out that Athena must pay a price for Corinth for all her previous good acts. Also, the ambassador explained that it's inappropriate for Athena to ally with a former enemy such as Corcyra over the treaty with a current friend who had previously served Athena, and he showed the importance of showing gratitude to the friends of the treaty. After these two speeches, an urgent meeting was held in Athens to discuss the circumstances of this issue, and the vote was overwhelmingly on Athena's alliance with the island of Corcyra and rejecting Corinth. Bit to remember: when you ask for help, address people's self-interests, not their mercy or gratitude. Shi Huangdi was the first emperor of China and the most powerful man of his time. During his reign, he managed to unify all the kingdoms surrounding him in a large kingdom called China, which became stronger and wider than Alexander the Great's empire. But in his later years, he isolated himself from people, fearing for his life from conspirators and aspirants. He used to sleep every night in a different room, and no one sees him at all, and whoever sees him is beheaded immediately. Even if he wanted to travel, he used to travel in disguise carefully so that no one knows his identity. And in one of these trips, he died suddenly, and his body was returned to the empire in a cart loaded with dried fish. He died alone, away from his family, friends, and his men. As for the king Louis XIV, he used to live in an unprecedented palace, where everything in the palace was about him and his orders. And he was always surrounded by nobles who were given suites in the palace, and their closeness to him depended on their grades and levels. The king's bedroom was literally the center of the palace and the center of everyone's attention, as he looked out from it every morning to be greeted by his men. Louis was always surrounded by his men and staff, and all of them sought his advice and wisdom. Louis understood from an early age that the king's isolation was a very dangerous thing, as in his absence, plots and revolutions were growing, and this might eventually lead to his demise and removal. Therefore, Louis during his reign was able to maintain relative calm and peace in his kingdom. Bit to remember: don't build castles to protect yourself, as isolation is dangerous. During the 1968 US presidential elections, Henry Kissinger called Richard Nixon's staff to offer them valuable information about the peace negotiation process that was taking place in France, as this information would help Nixon in his presidential race as a representative of the Republican Party. And in return, Kissinger would get a high ministerial seat in the new government. Nixon's team gladly accepted this offer. However, at the same time, Kissinger had made this offer as well to the representative of the Democratic Party, Hubert Humphrey, who asked him to provide him with internal information about Nixon, and he provided them with it. And in fact, Kissinger didn't care about either party, and all he wanted was to get this ministerial position, so his future became secured, whether the winner was from the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. In these elections, Nixon won and became the 37th President of the United States of America, and Kissinger became the National Security Advisor in this government. However, he was careful not to appear as a Nixon creation, and when Nixon was re-elected in the second term in 1972, he was one of the few officials who kept their positions. Also, he was the only senior official who survived the Watergate scandal, which led to Nixon's resignation as President of the United States. And Kissinger remained to serve under the rule of the next president, Gerald Ford, as the Secretary of the United States. Bit to remember, don't adhere to anyone. When we look at the Chinese history, we won't find a competition between leaders which is more famous than the competition and the conflict between Xiang Yu and Liu Bang, as the two began their lives as friends fighting on the same front, and Xiang was a noble known for strength and tyranny. He was also quick-tempered, violent, and cruel. Liu was a descendant of a peasantry and wasn't a professional soldier, but he was intelligent, resourceful, and strategically minded. With the passage of days, the conflict between these two leaders began to increase and flare up, which made each one of them wanting to destroy the other. And many times Xiang had the upper hand over Liu, but every time he refused to kill him, either as an act of mercy or a sign of respect for him. And therefore, Liu manages to escape. And one day, Liu was able to change the game and besiege Xiang by attacking him suddenly and was able to wipe out his entire army. Xiang escaped with a group of his retreating soldiers, and suddenly he shouted at them, "I hear that Liu Bang put a prize in return to my head. It's 1,000 pieces of gold and a fief of 10,000 families, so let me do you a beautiful favor." Then he cut his throat himself and died. Bit to remember, crush your enemy totally. Thanks for watching. Please follow our social media accounts. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel.